especially in Atlanta in general, and here specifically for Gwinnett. So some of these text questions get at the heart of that, about how we would like to see things in an ideal situation. And one of the frustrations for me has been over the years not being able to really predict the drive time to get to work or get to some of the important things across the county. So if anyone has any thoughts about that, feel free to share. And just in terms of the time constraint and unpredictability of travel here, we're talking particularly as it relates to most of us, we're usually driving alone in a car trying to get to our place and running late for it.
Well, that's the everyday is us, when you're on the road trying to get home at the end of a long work day to get to your children, with school buses, everybody out at the same time, that rush hour is far longer than an hour. It's rush days. And then the other part is when you have somebody come in to see you and they arrive at the Atlanta airport, what are the options for them getting to see you when they arrive? And how do they get to Gwinnett County?
Oh, sure. That's, we're here at the northern tip of what's been known as Metro Atlanta. With the interstates, what we've learned from moving here back in 1999 is that anytime there's an incident, anywhere, a crash, construction, whatever, that slows traffic on 85 or 985, we feel it not very far from our neighborhood, because everyone is trying to find some other way to get either across or another point to get onto the interstate to get to their jobs. And that was something I had to really get used to when we first moved here. And it's been a learning experience that kind of changes because we've seen some of the traffic patterns change over the years too. But that's a really good point, that what we used to call rush hour in traffic engineering, transportation planning, we call it peak hour, because realistically no one in a rush during rush hour, you're not going anywhere. But that period in some of our studies ends up being about 2.5 hours at times. And you can tell when you head out, if you don't leave by like 3:45 or so, you're going to be stuck in a longer delay. And what that does, just builds frustration, because what would take us 30 minutes or 20 minutes to get to our family and other important things, now it takes longer just by waiting and leaving during that period. Have either of you had an opportunity to change the pattern as far as the time of day when you had to drive to work?
It makes a big difference. When I was working downtown, I switched so that I was going into work. My husband and I would switch times after we had a child. Which one of us dropped off the child at daycare, and the other one of us would go into work incredibly early, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, so that we could do that. And then the other one whoever was going in late would stay late to avoid the majority of the traffic, because otherwise you're adding another hour or maybe more to the commute time. The other thing that we've done is I changed jobs. I could not do, after I had 2 children, I could not work in downtown and be available to get to them. One time in particular, I was doing a lunch and learn and was coming back, and of course it started to snow. And I was thinking about having a kindergarten son being let off the bus. And that was before I had a cell phone with me, and trying to stop every time I would try to stop to use a payphone, if it was working or not, and trying to call and find someone to make sure there was somebody there to meet at the school bus stop. And at that point, I decided I cannot do this job anymore, and had to limit my options to something that I knew was close to my children.
Well, that's an important point. And really, that is a factor that affected my inability to look at like carpooling. Because if you take some other route you might save some time. Then you're at the mercy of that person's schedule if something comes up with a child or whatever in school. And between that or children's activities, and another thing that kind of created that inability for me to kind of get into much of carpooling is a lot of us might be near each other in terms of where we would work, but what we do when we arrive there can be really different. And if you work in a setting that you have to engage, interact with the public, if you're not, there are times you have to have access to a vehicle to go to a client meeting or whatever. So it does create some challenges. So for me, when we started Adrian Collaborative, we wanted to encourage, we realized that carpooling as we grew might not always work as well. We could still always encourage a flex schedule to encourage staff to avoid those peak periods whenever it made sense, and to look at the time of day that they could be most effective throughout the week. And that's been a way that we kind of felt like we've contributed toward a little bit of a relief for that stress of trying to have the family balance when you've got that distance, either by time or miles or both. And you got to get back to the family or something, an emergency or sudden need came up. So, should I maybe send a reminder again about the text?
Yeah, because I think when we didn't have sound when we started, no one heard it, so.
Yeah, so everyone, we understand we had a little bit of trouble at the beginning with audio, so I want to go back and just reintroduce. We're here. My name is Todd Barker. We're here with Adrian Collaborative, and we're having just an informal time, our meetup, tweet up, and we've invited anyone to come in, especially if they're headed to Food Truck Friday. We're here on Main Street in Duluth, and the trucks are setting up right now. Not just for us, but it worked out really well. So we invite everyone to come in and join the conversation about some of the transportation needs and challenges and ideas here in Gwinnett County. And you can head right out with a great view, a great spot, and an early line for Food Truck Friday. Our firm gets involved with transportation planning and the environmental and community impacts of some of the transportation improvements and challenges that we have to decide on as a community and as a county, and beyond that as a region and state. We've invited some folks from colleagues, employees, some of our team, and also reached out to some of our client contacts and partners within the Atlanta Regional Commission who deal with land use and transportation. They may have a chance to send in a tweet or check in our conversation. So everyone's welcome, and if you have any ideas, please tweet them if you're away, and we'll work that in. And also, everyone, very important, if you have not taken time to look at and complete the text survey, please go ahead and start it. It's very simple. If you haven't seen it online, it's been just about everywhere. Please go ahead and follow these instructions. You just text the word JOIN to the number 74029, and then it's an interactive text survey. 8 questions. Most are very short answers with a few that give you a chance to share your own ideas. So do that while we're talking, and when you get finished, please tweet to let us know that you completed it during this time. So we'll just go ahead with some other thoughts then. One of the things that we've seen more of in the past several years is a better awareness of the importance of other what we call modes of transportation. And part of the text question, text survey, is asking about that as well. So why don't we kind of think about what types of transportation have we appreciated the most that has maybe been introduced in recent years around here, and what would we like to see improved or added if it's not here? Things like we look right out here and we see there have been improvements and some are underway, so that it's easier and safer to walk in a downtown area. I know in our neighborhood there's sidewalk. It's not perfect. A lot of communities have some sidewalks, but they're not perfect. There's not a real easy recreational bicycle access. You're pretty much going to have to decide to do it soft, kind of grassy, brushy shoulder or into traffic. So, anyone have any experiences or appreciation of seeing some of the other transportation modes here in the community?
I think I really appreciate walkability wherever I live. That's part of the reason we chose to live in historic Beaufort is we can pretty much walk to, things we need within that immediate area. Now, if you get, outside of that immediate area, there's really no sidewalks or very few, and no one wants to walk along 20. But walkability has always been something that I valued in places I've lived. Something that I really loved about living in other cities was being able to take the train and public transit, and that's something I do miss.
And where are those other cities?
Los Angeles.
Okay.
I mean, I know it's not a perfect transit system, but I enjoyed being able to take the train to, a whole 30 miles if I needed to. So.
Well, they have added, I guess it's within the last 5 years, maybe it's been a little bit longer than that, the multi-use sidewalks, bicycle paths along Peachtree Industrial in Gwinnett County. And that seems to be helpful because before that, when I would walk, even dropping my car off to have it worked on and to walk up to get a cup of coffee at a nearby place, I would be having to walk along Peachtree Industrial, on the shoulder or walk through the grass. Mm-hmm. And now at least there is a long expanse of a good sidewalk bicycle path there now.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Well, that's one of the things that I would like to see a lot more of is the gaps closed up so that little sections of sidewalk, especially what sometimes some communities are calling enhanced sidewalks or multi-use trails, wide enough so that recreational bicyclists and pedestrians walking activities don't kind of conflict with the bikes, and there's enough room for everyone. But like you said, safe out of the traffic and out of trying to negotiate the grass and the weeds and with trucks and everything going really close by. I think if we're able to see something ideal in the future, a lot more uses and communities around here would be connected by that. So that you could, if you wanted to walk to park facilities like we have just across our street, or if you wanted to walk to some other entertainment or to at least some type of basic commodity store, you would have more of those choices. Of course, what that comes down to when things are spread out is our land use. And I've invited some individuals who have a particular focus on land use. I don't know if they'll be able to participate. One of those things that I think the county has done more of, and we see it here with our planners here in Duluth, is looking at bringing more uses into a smaller space, kind of infilling, so that there's a chance to have more types of uses, more types of businesses or other services that we might want or need closer so that we can actually connect them. Because even if we have more connections, if things are that spread out, we're not going to walk. When it gets down to it, if we're talking about on a sunny day or whatever, or a really cold day, we're not going to walk to a certain distance before we decide, wait, I'm just going to jump in my car and do it. So that's a challenge for any of the counties, especially out where we had been, outgrowths in suburbs. And I think what I've seen is a little bit of a mindset changing. And here, a lot of what Duluth has emphasized is it's going to have an urban feel, an urban vibe, an urban kind of what we call density of the land use, so that a lot of those opportunities come without having to use a car to get to all of them. So I'd love to see that. That's kind of my ideal vision. When this survey is asking what we'd like to see, I'd like to see more of those choices that that anyone can have without having to always get into their car.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that I see when you're talking about downtown Duluth, it is great on the side of Buford Highway downtown that we are, but being able to cross Buford Highway as a pedestrian is not an easy thing to do. And that's one thing that I had always thought would be wonderful if there was some type of pedestrian overpass or underpass to get across. You notice that especially at events, the big events where people are able to park. There's plenty of parking over there, and you're right across the street. You're right there. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of parking. It's easy to get to without getting into the traffic and congestion when streets are blocked off, and you're right across the street. But there are so many cars, and even with the reduced speed limit, it's hard to walk, especially with a family, if you're trying to walk with the children and get across. The other thing that would open up is if there was an overpass like that, if it was available for golf carts, like in Peachtree City, mm-hmm. And if you were living in a place like downtown Duluth, a multi-use area, or Buford, mm-hmm. Having a golf cart as one form of transportation allows you to go that couple of miles and have the ability to get to a grocery store, places mm-hmm. like that might not be right where you live, but are very close.
Right. And it's more sustainable.
Right. And then, you have the covers for the golf carts so that it lets you get out in the rain and mm-hmm. Most weather.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very good point. It's funny that from growing up in a small town in North Carolina and moving here, my first thoughts when you think of golf, it's like a golf cart community.
Right.
And you think of, wealthy or maybe a retirement community or that kind of thing where everything is spread out because of the golf course. And I think that's a good point that type of vehicle has been used in a lot of other places now, and it's starting to get a lot more attention as a way to connect things when it's, like I said, a little hard, either too far or just not as convenient for walking, but close enough where you don't have to worry about having to get in and out of a full vehicle that's going to have greater emissions and those other issues that come with it.
Well, it also allows aging population. Since that's the most rapidly growing, I guess the over 50s, or 45 and over, I guess the baby boomers, and as we get older, it allows us to interact and be more present and able to do these things and visit the shops, continue to be active in our communities if we were able to, when we can't walk as far, be able to go and get on the golf cart and go to Town Green or, wherever we're wanting to go to the grocery store. Mm-hmm.
That's a really good concept. Make sure that you name that in your survey, by the way.
So, I haven't gotten
when it finishes.
So if anyone else is looking at your surveys, I'm hopeful that the delay that's happening with some of it is that so many people in Gwinnett are completing the surveys right now. They're experiencing a delay with maybe the server, the text service that's set up this great format. It's a great idea and an easy way for everyone to participate. So let's no one be discouraged. We're kind of stuck in a few of these. We want to kind of do this live, complete our survey to kind of see as you did it, and we're waiting on about the second or third question still. So everyone, be patient and maybe it'll free up. And if not, we'll keep trying until we get it submitted. I think they're trying to capture all those surveys this week by tonight, if possible. And so we want to kind of bring this to a good conclusion ourselves by meeting here on Friday with Food Truck Friday out front. So if you haven't already done the survey, don't give up on it and keep trying to get it completed during the night. So we're going to keep talking about transportation ideas. And one of the things that I have wondered about, and your comment about pedestrian overpass reminded me, is that with some of the future planning, schools are really important as far as how they're located, where they're located. We see a lot of new schools coming together. Gwinnett County has worked really hard in some locations to kind of have really good new school sites, and sometimes they take opportunity when a good opportunity comes up for property. No matter where they are, there's at least going to be an increased amount of families, kids walking, biking all around it. And one thing I've noticed when it comes to the schools that have more events, public events, is that I would love to see more crosswalks, because in a lot of cases the parking can't be fit on a big family event, like there's a football game on a high school or whatever. You're not going to fit it all in totally on-site parking spaces. And I know of at least a couple schools where you end up parking across the street or whatever, and there have been a couple of tragic mishaps, accidents where people are trying to cross. And I would love to see something where there's technology, there's signals systems, there's crosswalks that can be more active instead of just the painted stripes there. But I'd love to see more of that, where there's something as big as a school, that in a lot of cases that property is used in a lot of different ways for the community, not just during regular school hours. And so I'd love to see something that realizes there's not an easy way for a broad area of people to walk from their homes. They're going to be needing cars and hoping that it's families that can fill up a car or carpooling. Even though they do that, they still need a safe way to walk to the activities and back.
Well, that's what, and if you're talking about nighttime events, your visibility and cars would not be necessarily expecting to have families crossing at places that they typically aren't at that time of day. In Florida, a low-tech thing that they do, in Florida, a lot of times at the crosswalks, they have the little bins. It's really just PVC pipe, I think, with the orange flags in it. You grab a flag to walk across, so something that had kind of glow in the dark, and warning lights would be great in the crosswalk. They could be turned on. Event in progress. Reduce the speed limit, just like you would with the school crossings. Just something that could be activated. But when you're actually walking across, if there was something that you could grab, if there's not going to be, some events you just can't have monitors. You can't have crosswalk, people there all the time. But being able to grab something just to help you be more visible as you cross.
One of the things that I've seen in some of the more recent and forward-thinking transportation planning is kind of getting away from the idea that you have a block on the road and you want to make sure you put crosswalks just at certain locations, and that you're going to force everyone to do that. We all know whether whether a local government has a police force to kind of give out tickets or not. Eventually, anyone walking, if you want to encourage walking, they're going to look for the easiest way. And I've seen in some of the studies in our profession look more closely at where the walking makes the most sense, which may not be exactly what the engineering ideas had been originally, but where the safe and most convenient way. Because if you're going to encourage the most walking, it'd be great to kind of have opportunities to do the crossing where it's going to encourage the most people. So I think that's something that I've seen in some locations around here.
A lot of times that's right in the middle of the block.
Well,
because
they
set up the crosswalks at either end, but where you're going to is right in the middle of the block, so you don't want to walk up that far and then walk back down. So
that's a great point. They even came up with the term mid-block crossings, and actually we switched it out just down here on Main Street, where there's more crossings where people will be most likely to go from one use to another, from entertainment over to the restaurant, instead of walking out of the way and wrapping around. And so, of course, we can't have it being endless, but adding more opportunities for people to cross safely where it's more convenient to their uses, I see that encouraging a lot more walking activity just in general. So I think that could be a great thing to look at in the future. And maybe some of the existing crossings are fine where they are, just opportunities to look at if it's long enough to be inconvenient. Our human nature is, okay, if it's going to be inconvenient, I'm just going to break rules. And so to have some balance between keeping it safe and not having people to walk out randomly in the street, but also looking at, wow, if it's a long enough block or enough of a major draw on the other side, let's go ahead and consider another crossing that recognizes, wow, if we have this, more people will use it and it will become more of a walkable community instead of that conflict always being there. So I'd like to see that looked at more closely. Have we had any more progress on the survey questions yet?
No.
They're still frozen. Well,
I tried sending the answer again to see if it would.
Yeah, we'll be excited to see that maybe 2 times or 3 times the number of the goal of 50,000 that they had so many that it just took all the rest of the evening to get it all in.
Mm-hmm.
So, any thoughts if we were looking at long range ideas? I'm not sure what some of these other questions are going to pop up, but just in general, if we had a chance to say, hey, please, whatever you do, let's think hard about this choice in the future. Like, for instance, something that always is a controversy in some of the recent legislation that we've had here in Georgia is the word transit. And we've seen many ideas across as far as whether it would work, whether anyone would want it, the cost of it, technology, what we really mean by transit, and how affordable it really could be. So, if we didn't have to worry about the sheer cost, if we figured out that we could use certain types of technology to make it more affordable, how will we use transit?
Well, we just got one tweet. It says, I think Gwinnett needs public transit and should reconsider connecting to the larger MARTA system.
Ah, great, excellent point. So, time's right in there. So, one of the things that I ran into, our firm conducts training in environmental planning, transportation, other related topics. And we had some individuals that were based in Midtown, and they were hoping to use transit to come to our training. And the express bus system with Gwinnett, the way it was set up, it was assuming everybody's here in Gwinnett and commuting to Midtown or downtown during the day, a certain block of time, and then it gets really spread out, and then the reverse to come back home. And one of our colleagues, and friend who actually is a resident here in Duluth, she does use that system. She has to leave at a certain time, so if she has a demanding project or whatever, it creates a little bit of conflict, but she has to leave and to get back. And at one time, I think 5 o'clock was, let's say, somewhere near 5 o'clock was the last bus.
5:30 something, or it depends on where you are, because a lot of times they would pick up at at certain spots.
All right, yeah.
And how do you get there if you didn't drive? If you took transit, it doesn't help you too much if they're picking up at another spot that you can't get to quickly.
That's been a challenge. So I've had meetings at Atlanta Regional Commission, at Georgia Department of Transportation. I had one just 2 days ago with some of the management at Georgia Department of Transportation. We didn't leave the building until after 6 o'clock. Now they're very close to a MARTA station right across the street. But I had the distance is a challenge here in Gwinnett, so I usually have to drive, and often I'm by myself because it's a specific time I have to be there, and I may run into another meeting. And so, if I had taken the bus system down to it, and it was supposed to be out at 4, but the meeting had to go to 6 something, and I came out, I would have to find someone would have to drive to get me, so that trip wouldn't have been avoided. It would have just been less convenient. So that is a challenge. And I agree that we're, I think, past that point where I think the way the land was developing, the ideas, and just where the economy and everything were back in some of the previous decades, it seems like we all are kind of taking a fresher look at, well, wait a minute, our thoughts about what transit, as far as the negatives of it, that isn't really the whole picture. That isn't really what it has to mean. There are a lot of new ideas that improve transit, and I think that the person who tweeted there, the idea of better connections, if there's some way to connect either through buses or whatever else, but a much more like a robust schedule to get connected to MARTA, if anything else.
Well, how old is MARTA? 40, almost 40 years old?
That's my memory.
Because I remember coming to Atlanta. I was living in Ringgold, Georgia, North Georgia, and I remember coming into Atlanta the weekend that it opened and spending the weekend in Atlanta. But I remember at the time, when they started extending, and that's been in more recent years, probably 20, 30 years ago, when there was a lot of discussion again about extending the lines and the plans and the opposition. The thing that I would hear from most people was that brings in a lot of crime, that'll be, and I don't think, and from what I'm hearing now, I don't hear that as an opposition anymore. That since MARTA extended into other areas, it did not bring crime to the area. It did not, it can be used to build communities, make it be more convenient for people to get in and out of Gwinnett County. So I'm wondering, I'd like to hear the results, what people's opinions are now about tying into MARTA and other public transportation options. Some of the things are just really cool to have, when you think about it. It's like, okay, is there any kind of trolley or something that would be cool, more attractive than a bus? Was there something that would look nice for certain areas to get you to certain places locally where you could tie in to a more extended? So maybe some local options that are more attractive to get you to those MARTA stations than having to take a taxi, which we don't have as many options, for that now. Catching a bus if there was something that looked and was well received.
Yeah, that's we've seen some examples, of course. Big example downtown Atlanta. They've been working with it and looking at expanding it. And I think we could probably all do our own research and see a lot of success stories where those kind of local options that use transit in a positive way and get away from the kind of that perception and misperception that it's just nothing but heavy rail trains that, when you say the word, those kind of trolleys, whether it's wheels or just other systems, if communities are bringing those in, I think they have opportunities in what we see in Atlanta. They have opportunities to kind of tie that in with economic development, so it's something that becomes an asset of the community instead of it being a negative. It becomes something that really helps spur positive things. So I think that's a good point that we would hope that the experts that'll be looking at the future of transportation in Gwinnett County would kind of look at that and kind of look out at what the trends and the values and maybe some of the technology will be farther out, so that we can be prepared for that instead of just always kind of feeling like at times our ideas are old technologies that are kind of getting outdated.
Well, your point about technology, even things in events that I attend where they have shuttle buses, it would always be nice. I mean, we have the technology, we have apps, and for conferences and things like that, you are able to pull up, when the session started at hospitals. You have the little boards that show where everybody is, the patients. If we were able to see where the bus was, when it was going to be arriving, instead of when it's raining, standing out in the rain, if you could stand someplace that was covered, more comfortable, and that you walked out, just a couple of minutes before the bus arrived. Or if you could say, I'm at this stop, and then get texted back, oh, we'll be there in so many minutes. It would make such a huge difference because we're dependent on that. That's why we like our cars. We want more control of the situation. And knowing is a big part of the control of the situation. If you know that there's the bus on the way, that you're not going to be there for 2 hours waiting.
Right.
Or if it was going to be 2 hours, you want to know that they come up with alternatives. And I think that that's a big thing right now. As far as I know, that's not a part of
I'm not sure, but that's
transportation.
a really good idea, and that kind of gets us in toward, just like this survey, this whole great exchange that came about. It did so mostly through social media, and so many individuals have access to it. Not necessarily equal access, the exact same devices or speed or whatever, but almost everyone around has access to at least one phone, and the idea there to be able to have a little bit more interaction to understand, oh, okay, this bus has been delayed, or it's it's on its way, it'll be there in just a few minutes. I think that's a great creative idea.
The popularity of Waze, the social media GPS system, where you get to see you see the little bubble, so you would know who was at other bus stops, and there's no reason why a bus could not be plugged in so that you're watching the bus on the route. You know where they are.
Taking Waze and adding walking and transit into that. That's.
Could you imagine? I mean, a lot of times there's no significant difference between going to one stop and another. And if you knew, oh, well, it's going to be 15 minutes if I go here, but the other bus will be there in 5 minutes from where I am, and you just pull in, go ahead and park, or you say, oh, I'll just go on to this other stop. I have plenty of time.
Yeah, those are kind of things that, again, are human nature. If some of these alternatives are can be made more convenient, and I think to your point, more reliable, so we know we can rely on that it's going to take an hour. Okay, I can decide to do something different, or okay, it's on time. It's going to be only 10 minutes. That taking that uncertainty out, because we have such crazy busy lives now. If something's going to eat up my hour because I'm going to be stranded waiting on the bus or whatever, at least let me know it so that I can make arrangements to make a better use of that hour. I think that's tying us in with the technology, social media, and other tools that we have online. That just sounds like a great way to encourage that we can give up more of our dependence on that single occupant kind of, us driving alone in our vehicles everywhere. So I think that's a really good idea. Let's hope the survey question gives you a chance to add that in as well. If not, we'll have it captured here. So any other general ideas? If we could just come up with anything that we would hope our part of the county would have in the future as they look ahead to kind of meeting our transportation challenges. Any other ideas of what it might look like? Look out 20, 30 or more years, what we either think it will look like or hope it will look like.
The other thing that I always think about is how unpleasant sometimes the bus stop or the transportation stops might be. Seems like it's a prime opportunity to do kind of like the airport is. That should be a great place to have a Dunkin' Donuts or a Starbucks or somewhere that is really, that adds to the experience.
You mean like it's an overall transit area?
Or library. Why can't the library be a stop? Having things that you could do to fill that time in between. Having a place that you feel comfortable going to the restroom. I mean, that's the other thing when you're talking about. When you're in your car, you have more control of being able to stop and, your schedule. And it's just things that we are not used to planning for that we think that are that we don't have our individual options open to us, that way.
Right.
And if there were things, I know my father, when I lived in Buckhead, he used to take Marta to the Brookhaven station, and the McDonald's was right across the street, so he could cross the street and I could come pick him up there. But if there was a place, there were places within walking distance where you could go in and just be more pleasant, to wait, and then also, places that it would be a win-win situation. It brings in business to that area, it benefits the local businesses wherever the stops are, plus, it takes a lot of the traffic off the roads.
We got a tweet suggestion: encourage telecommuting via public Wi-Fi or broadband.
Oh, yes. We can't end our conversation without talking about. Wow, if you think back to telecommuting years ago, when it first came out, everyone was nervous about it, and even my former employer, as great as they were, the industries just in general, there was just difficulty understanding how can we trust, will the employee be productive, will all the equipment be something that we can handle, and then there's a question of access, and can they get fast enough access online to do it. Now we're in a time when it's so much easier because in some cases the internet access in a few places is free. We're seeing more of it being upgraded, and I think just if companies give more of a chance, I'll put a plug in for commute options, a great nonprofit initiative in the region that looks at ways to encourage telecommuting, carpooling, and other things. The Georgia Commute Options can probably give a lot better statistics than I could ever look up, but just how productive people can be if they do have a chance to prove themselves in telecommuting. And I think creating that opportunity is a good way to take some of the extra cars off during the typical commutes, but also it takes that stress off, so the employees can be actually even more productive. At least that's been in our experience. We encourage telecommuting as an actual policy. We encourage it instead of just tolerate it, and we are going to trust that our team will be offering us their best because that stress is taken off in that particular setting, maybe that day or that particular period or whatever. It's more effective for them to work remotely. And on top of that, when you take that geographic boundary out, that's the beauty of being online, is that you kind of remove those geographic boundaries. So you could have access to great talent that's somewhere else, and they don't even have to get into the mix of commuting at all. And we have that within our companies. There's parts of our family that are great at what they do. They're experts, and they're part of us, and we connect daily or whenever through internet access, and instead of them having to drive in. And I think the tweet also talked about, one of the things that would have to be a change though is having better telecommunications equipment, some broadband, really fast, stable, reliable access. It's not available everywhere, and there are times it can be spotty. So some communities around here, I think Regal, where you said you're from, at least some of the areas in
because of Amazon, I think is why that whole area increased speed.
They've gone in with broadband, and so if we could see more of that, and so that you have really lightning fast speeds, sometimes I think you get more done. Yeah, trusting employees to kind of use their talents like that.
A lot of it depends on the job you have, though. Nurses are not going to be able to telecommute.
Telecommuting nurse, I would not want.
Probably not. And then there's the other side too, that I have seen multiple examples where there is a job that telecommuting does seem like a great option, and it has worked for the people that it has been tested with, but then there will be a bad apple that when that telecommuting turns into a day off. And that's what, I think it's just like with everything else. If you have the success with it, then you know how to handle that. You know what the expectations are for telecommuting. It doesn't matter to most companies, and whether you're doing your work at 10 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock in the morning, it does not matter. A lot of the things when you're talking about the online access is fine, and it can even be advantageous when you're doing things internationally. To have that where there's somebody always around, somebody that is going to be responsive. You have an employee that will let you know if something critical came up, regardless of what time it was. You have somebody on the clock, almost like a security guard, 24 hours, because you've allowed the flexibility. But then there are other places that the telecommuting does not mean that they're going to be on the computer necessarily. A lot of it can be just answering the phones remotely, being in contact with people that you don't have to be in person with, being in contact with other employees by phone, being available. And I think that's the thing, is when you are expected to be available, when you need to be available, whether it's physically or remotely. Different people have different needs, but I know that there's always those jobs that you have to have the presence, and then there's also the advantages that come with seeing people face to face and the energy in a company by having a group together. So there's the combination. There is for every company, I think there's a best scenario and what works best, allowing the flexibility. And I think here you've achieved that. When you have the combination where people telecommute, people are here. It's just figuring out what works for what corporation, and then writing that up just like you would with any other policy, work policy, what the expectations are.
Yeah, that's some excellent advice there. I have to remember some of that as we refine our own policy. We're still learning a lot, and that's one of the challenges we're trying to work with, is make sure there's enough kind of team building and interaction so that everyone is kind of trusting in the share, because most of our work is kind of a team environment, to make sure that everyone's engaged, since it's not the kind of thing we're going to be joking around or whatever every day at break, or walking back and forth talking to each other. On the days that we're out doing other things, or most people are telecommuting, we want to make sure that they have that trust, and that we can all kind of be kind of rolling together. So I think that's a really good point to make. But I think if more employers here in Gwinnett could take a more serious look at their own policies, when they can encourage more of those activities, any combination with flexible schedules to kind of get out of the busiest times of day, if it works for their profession, like you said, and mixing that with some opportunities for telework and telecommuting, and any combinations there that allow them to spread out when their employees otherwise will all be in the cars, kind of trying to get in to the same time as everyone else. Any of that we could do to spread that out will help just kind of take pressure off our roads, because we all see how expensive it is, but also kind of help, I think, in some ways, be a lot less stressful than everyone dealing with the traffic when we do have the heavy congestion at times around here. We've had really good conversation so far, and we actually are at the end of our time. For anyone who was thinking about jumping out early with the food trucks, but if anyone else wanted to send us a tweet the rest of the evening, we would be happy to take those and respond to them, and also forward them on and make sure they're shared with the Great Exchange. Please keep trying to finish out your survey, and I'm sure we'll be able to get it in sometime tonight. We'll finish ours, and we just want to thank everyone for joining us, and enjoy Food Truck Friday if you're here, and enjoy the weekend no matter where you are. Thanks.